I'm Rick Carlo with Checkpoint. I want to tell you a story about the cloud, a story about a paradigm shift, and how organizations should secure the clouds today. But before that, let me tell you a little bit about our success with security in the cloud. Today alone, Checkpoint has thousands of customers in the cloud. We're securing environments such as AWS, Azure, GCP, Ali Cloud, and Oracle Cloud. They use a wide variety of Checkpoint technologies to secure those cloud applications, and I'm going to talk about that later. We secure over 800 million assets a day. And if you think about this is a huge commitment on our part. We secure some of the largest cloud environments for the most marquee names in the world. And partners recognize our leadership in this space. Last year, we received 10 different recognitions across different areas of cloud security. We were chosen as the #1 cloud security vendor by GigaOM, and the only vendor with a solution that preemptively stopped unknown zero-day vulnerabilities like MoveIt or Log4Shell. And we continue to innovate and be leaders in the cloud field. So to understand the cloud and its paradigm shift, let's start with the basics. Conceptually, the cloud has a front door and a service door. The front door faces the internet, where users access applications, typically via HTTPS or an API connection. For example, a retailer's customers might use a web browser or a mobile application, or even third-party SaaS applications to interact with our cloud-based retail application. Now, the service doors for our power users who maintain the cloud. Developers, DevOps teams, and contractors access development and integration environments here. It also connects to the data center for our backend systems. Hopefully this makes sense. The issue is that hackers exploit both the front door and the service door. They use the front door to launch attacks like SQL injection or scan the internet for exposed assets. Hackers might also use leaked credentials to access the service door. For example, Edward Snowden, he was a former NSA contractor. He used his credentials to leak classified information, including data he wasn't even authorized to access. Similarly, an infected or compromised machine within the company could breach the cloud. So once a hacker gains access to the cloud, they can find various vulnerabilities and risks, such as exposed secrets like API keys, databases with excessive privileges, vulnerabilities in open source libraries, improperly exposed assets, and misconfigurations. These issues collectively pose significant security risks. Cloud vulnerabilities can number in the hundreds, thousands, and even hundreds of thousands. For instance, one of our customers discovered 1.5 million issues during a cloud scan. Managing even 10,000 alerts is challenging, let alone 1.5 million. Regardless of our efforts, this is the reality we face. We operate in a highly dynamic environment with significant risks. We can address some of these issues, but trying to fix them all is a losing battle. Even if we manage to resolve them, new ones are going to continually emerge with every change that we make. Since all these assets and their associated risks are interconnected, hackers can exploit these vulnerabilities to move laterally from one asset to another, eventually reaching and stealing the PII data, the juicy bits. Simply identifying, prioritizing, and fixing these risks won't suffice. You'll still lose the battle. So what can we do? Here's our solution. So we see too many risks. Many risks are known, and these can be the most critical of them. The remediation process is slow, and we're chasing DevOps who are running circles around us. We need to stop chasing this risk. It's time to shift the paradigm for cloud security. You need a CNAPP that prioritizes prevention. It's essential to integrate preventive measures into your cloud environment and stop constantly chasing these risks. You should remain secure even when you're unable to address these issues immediately. That's precisely what we're offering, the first and only cloud-native application protection and prevention platform. At Checkpoint, we enhance CNAPP with a focus on prevention using 3 integrated products: a WAF for prevention, network security within the cloud, and our CNAP platform. This approach empowers CISOs and security experts to take control rather than relying on developers and DevOps for cloud security. We can't just knock on the doors of our developers and ask, would you mind fixing this vulnerability? It's just too risky. It's crucial for security experts to take the lead in securing the critical applications rather than depending on developers to fix the vulnerabilities. So let's go back to our cloud story. Remember, we had so many different types of alerts and risks in the thousands. So what do? Well, here are 3 recommendations from Checkpoint. First, we're going to put a WAF in the front door. Now, this is trivial. In fact, most organizations are probably doing this already. But if you're talking about prevention first, you don't want to just put any WAF. You can go to any cloud vendor today, and they'll give you a WAF, but that's not the solution. You need a WAF that protects against zero-day threats, not just based on signatures or focused on the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. It should inspect and protect your APIs, as these are crucial for application communication and are often exposed to the internet. With zero-day prevention immediately available, use of AI rather than traditional signatures, the highest catch rate, and full multi-cloud support, this is what Checkpoint CloudGuard WAF provides. Our WAF is unique in the industry, having prevented exploits like MoveIt, Log4Shell, and Text4Shell without requiring any action from the users. In fact, in the case of these 0 days, if you had looked at our logs, they don't say things like, I found a vulnerable Log4j. Back then, there wasn't even a name for the Log4j vulnerability. We just blocked it. It looked suspicious, it didn't look normal, and we blocked it. Unlike other vendors that can take weeks to generate signatures, our WAF blocks suspicious activity immediately, ensuring continuous protection. This proactive approach means you don't have to spend time mitigating threats after they've already compromised your environment. And that's just one of the special features of our WAF. Our WAF can be deployed as a plugin for hyperscalers, Node.js, Kubernetes, Kong, and various on-prem web services using your own token for SSL connections. To simplify deployment, though, we offer WAF as a service. It only requires a DNS change to secure your applications. But we don't stop there. We also provide full API schema discovery, enabling you to define policies based on API calls and their operations, not just vulnerabilities. And this brings me to the second recommendation for prevention first cloud security. Put a good network security solution to guard both your front and your service doors. Now, this network security solution must provide you with macro segmentation based on applications. In the past, we used to put applications in VNets or VPCs, where we had multiple applications in each VPC or VNet, depending on whether it's AWS or Azure. But our cloud network security solution is a hub and spoke that sits between the VNets and the VPCs, or both. And we perform the connection automatically with an auto discovery of VNets and VPCs. Again, this is important. The whole hub and spoke architecture is fully automated so that what you can do is put applications in dedicated accounts and connect them to a landing zone account. And you can deploy our network security solution in the landing zone. And now you can use this landing zone for micro-segmentation to defend your front and your service doors. Now, while you may choose to use the cloud provider's native firewall, I would recommend against it. Consider the following. Now, first, ask yourself, are you getting the best threat prevention from those cloud vendors? Are you getting a solution that works across all clouds the same way with the same policy? Now, not just in your AWS, Azure, or GCP environments, but also in your own data centers. Of course not. If you use the native firewalls provided by the cloud vendors and another separate one in your data centers, do you end up managing 3 or 4 different policies? And when we are talking about those cloud providers and firewalls, who's managing them? Developers? DevOps? And if that's the case, who's actually in control? And importantly, when you scale your cloud to multi-cloud, firewalls from those cloud providers don't scale with you. But when you look at our solution, it isn't only automatically deployed, it also auto-scales. It automatically creates the microsegmentation for the hub and spokes for you. It brings all the objects from all the clouds, and you can define policies based on the cloud objects you want. For example, you can define a rule based in AWS security groups and apply it to Azure VNets, and we will do it for you. And that's the beauty of having one unified policy across all your clouds and your on-prem data centers. And if you're using Checkpoint Quantum, it's the same policy. And then, to top it off, there's the amount of security our network security provides. Everything from deep packet inspection to identity awareness, catching malware, preventing 0 days, and the depth of logging and certification that we have. Remember, this was Checkpoint's bread and butter for over 30 years. It isn't a one-year-old feature developed by a cloud provider that isn't even a security company. So going back to simplicity, we made sure that we integrated it tightly with the cloud vendor's WAN networking infrastructure. Just in the past year or so, each vendor has come up with their own version of WAN technology. Azure has vWAN, AWS has Cloud WAN, and Google has Packet Intercept, and we integrated with them all. But when you deploy Checkpoint, they are all unified to make things much simpler. So that's network security. But what else can you do? Well, my final recommendation for you for prevention first cloud security is to have a CNAP. But again, you don't use just any CNAP. You use a CNAP that is built around prevention. And let me explain what that means. A CNAP that is not prevention first will generate thousands of alerts, maybe even hundreds of thousands of alerts. But a CNAP with a focus on prevention will tell you, you're quite secure all over, but here are a few alerts and issues that you really need to deal with. And here are the things you do to fix them. And how do we do that? We take all those alerts and we use a vast array of engines and modules that I'll talk about later, like cloud workload protection, cloud detection and response, cloud posture management, data posture management, identity entitlement management, and even code and CI/CD security. And we use all of them to categorize and understand the level of risks of each individual alert. Once we understand them, we put them in a risk calculation module that takes into account the exposure level, the data sensitivity, and the criticality of the application, and we divide them into 4 quadrants. So you can see the upper right-hand quadrant is what you must fix as soon as possible. Now, other CNAP solutions are doing the same, but what makes us unique is the following. The number of alerts that you'll see on the upper right hand will be based not just on sensitivity and criticality, but also on whether or not you use a preventative solution like WAF or network security at the front door and the service door. For instance, if we know you have a web application that has a vulnerable version of Log4j facing the internet, every other CNAP vendor will tell you this is a critical problem and you must fix it. But with Checkpoint, our CNAP will tell you, listen, I know you have this problem, but since you have our WAF in front of it, and because we know how to block it, the problem is virtually patched for you. So in effect, we will reduce the severity of the alert, and it won't appear in the high-risk quadrant, so you have less to worry about and less to fix. Here's another example. Let's assume that you have an RDS with sensitive data in AWS. And let's assume that this RDS is configured so anyone can access it. Any other CNAP will tell you that this is a critical risk. But again, not with Checkpoint. In this particular case, with Checkpoint, it's going to tell you, in essence, listen, This RDS is in one account in AWS, but I see there's a Checkpoint network security firewall in the service door. So it's actually not really facing the internet because we are protecting it. So again, the severity goes down because while it looks exposed, in reality, very few people can really access it. And these are two examples of how we can connect the dots between network security, WAF security, and all the different risks that you have inside your cloud, and how our CNAP focuses your attention on what really needs to be fixed. Now, what happens with the things that we did identify? Well, once we find these issues in your cloud, we will provide detailed steps on how to mitigate them and communicate them to your developers and DevOps directly. This can be done via Jira, ServiceNow, or Slack, or almost any other system that you might have. But it doesn't end there because we also have bots called cloud bots that can perform mitigation for you automatically. But also, we will always keep you informed, and you will see what your developers and DevOps fixed and what they didn't. Another thing that makes our CNAP unique is its level of coverage. You see, our CNAP isn't a year or two old. Checkpoint acquired Dome9 back in 2018, and they were the pioneers in cloud security posture management. Since then, we've continued to develop and improve the product for our customers. So we have the highest coverage in terms of the type of assets in all clouds, whether it's Azure, AWS, GCP, Ali Cloud, or other. And of course, we also fully support Kubernetes. And there's another acquisition that we made of a company called Spectral that provides high-end code and CI/CD security. And our code security solution is integrated directly into your pipeline and even into the applications your developers use to write their code. And if, for instance, they decide to use an open source library with a vulnerability, we can notify them about a risk and give them remediation playbooks. We also see if there are secrets embedded in the code, like an admin password or an API key. Companies like Salesforce, VMware, Credit Suisse, and Reuters use our products to scan their code. I'm sure you can trust us as well. I'll take this opportunity to introduce some additional capabilities that we added to our CNAP this year. One is around our threat analysis and visualization. The second one is around threat detection and how we correlate MITRE attack risks with things that appear when we connect the dots to find toxic combinations of vulnerabilities. Essentially, what our engine is saying is if A happens and B happens and C happens, then the risk is high. But only if one of these happens, then the risk is low. So this is what we have today at Checkpoint. Here you can see everything in one slide. You can see the 8 different modules and 52 different engines under them. From network security through WAF to CSPM, CWPP, KIM, CDR, DSPM, and code security. And remember, a lot of these are acquisitions of companies that were leaders in their field. And then, after the acquisition, Checkpoint's hundreds of developers made sure that everything was tightly integrated and unified in a single platform. Now, to help you even further, we are working closely with major cloud providers like AWS and Azure to build the right security blueprints for you to implement, based not just on what you get from Checkpoint, but also on how it integrates with these different cloud platforms. And for each blueprint, we will take you through the process of explaining what you should do, where, how, and why. In summary, stop chasing cloud risks. Start preventing them. Thank you.